This morning, 3 of the 5 former Memphis police officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols have been acquitted on state charges.
Not guilty.
The defendants, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, crying and hugging their lawyers and family. Nichols' family calls the verdict a miscarriage of justice.
Was I surprised that there wasn't a single guilty verdict on any of the counts or any of the lesser included offenses, given the overwhelming evidence that I think that we presented? Yes, I was surprised. Do I have an explanation for it? No.
He pulled over. Minutes later, he was on the ground, barely able to stand. 5 police officers surrounded him, and before the night ended, he was beaten so badly he couldn't walk on his own. 3 days later, on January 10th, 2023, he was pronounced dead. His name was Tyre Nichols. At one point during the encounter, his voice broke, and he called out for one person. Not a lawyer, not a friend, not for help. His mother. Police said this began as a routine traffic stop. They said reckless driving. But when the footage was later reviewed, officials admitted something disturbing. There's no clear evidence that he was. No dangerous swerving. No immediate threat. So why did it end like this? Today we're walking through this case. What happened? What failed? And how a simple stop became fatal. Welcome to the Crime Anatomy. We uncover the real stories behind the nation's most disturbing cases. If stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an episode. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, because stories like this don't belong to one city. They happen everywhere.
I walked into the room and I saw my son. I immediately went over to him and I fell out on him because my son was beaten to a pulp. His head was the size of a watermelon. His nose was broken. His neck was split open from the swelling. He was bruised from head to toe.
Before Tyre Nichols became a headline, he was a person, a son, and a father. Tyre DeAndre Nichols was 29 years old. He was born in 1993 and raised in the Sacramento area of California. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood surrounded by family, he was the youngest of 4 siblings, 2 older brothers and 1 older sister, Kiana Dixon. To them, Tyre was the baby of the family. His mother, Rovon Wells, calls him her baby boy, not as a nickname, but as a description. Tyre was the child who stays emotionally close, the one who checks in, the one who calls multiple times a day just to say hello. His stepfather, Rodney Wells, later described him simply. He didn't have a thug bone in his body. Tyre avoided conflicts. From childhood, he became obsessed with movement, especially skateboarding. He started skating around the age of 6, and it never left him. It became his outlet, his freedom, his way of thinking. As he grew older, he added more quiet passions. Photography, city skylines, sunsets, the night sky. He became fascinated with astrophotography, capturing stars, planets, and moments most people never notice. Tyre lived with Crohn's disease, a chronic digestive illness that affected his weight and stamina. He was about 6 feet 3 inches and roughly 145 pounds. But he didn't let his health define him. And then he became a father. He has a 4-year-old son named Milo, and that changed everything. Friends say fatherhood made Tyre more focused, more intentional. He talked about wanting to improve himself, to be present, to be stable. But like many black men in America, Tyre feels uneasy around police. After seeing the killing of George Floyd in 2020, he told people he didn't like police encounters, not because he had done anything wrong, but because he knew how fast things could change. On the night of Saturday, January 7th, 2023, Tyre was just driving. Not hiding, not fleeing, not doing anything unusual, just driving. And within minutes, that ordinary moment became irreversible. The officers who stopped Tyre Nichols that night were not from a standard patrol unit. They belonged to a specialized team called Scorpion, street crimes operation to restore peace in our neighborhoods. The unit was created to suppress violent crime in Memphis, meant to be proactive, high intensity, fast. But in practice, Scorpion became known for something else, Aggressive tactics, plainclothes operations, unmarked approaches, rapid escalation. This unit was not trained to slow things down. It was trained to take control. And control, when it replaces communication, changes everything. That night, officers claimed they stopped Tyre for reckless driving. They said he was swerving. They said he was dangerous. But later, when police leadership reviewed the footage, something uncomfortable emerged. There was no clear evidence of reckless driving. No near collisions that NO confirmed danger. This became the first fracture in the story, because every decision that followed rests on that claim. If a stop is justified, then what follows is procedure. If it is not, then what follows becomes something else. Tyre didn't know any of this. He didn't know the unit's reputation. He didn't know what was about to happen. On Saturday, January 7th, 2023, shortly after 8 p.m., the police lights came on. Tyre saw them in his rearview mirror. He did not speed up, he did not swerve, he did not try to escape. He pulled over. This matters, because later, what happened next would be framed as resistance. But on the footage, Tyre did not look like someone preparing for a fight. He stopped his car, that he opened the door, that he stepped out. His hands were visible. Almost immediately, voices overlapped. Different commands, different tones, different directions. Get out. Hands up. On the ground. Tyre looked confused. He asked what was going on. This is not unusual. People ask that question every day. But this moment did not slow. It accelerated. An officer threatened to use a taser. Another deployed pepper spray. Tyre was shocked physically. His body reacted before his mind did. He turned and he ran. Not toward danger, but toward home. He yelled, "I didn't do anything." Those words matter, because later reports will be written. Narratives will form. Justifications will appear. But on the footage, what you hear is fear. Not rage. Not threats. Not violence. Fear. Tyre ran down the street, disoriented from the spray and the shock. His movements were unsteady, uneven. Behind him, officers chased. On foot. In vehicles. This was no longer a stop. It was a pursuit. And once a pursuit begins, the logic changes. It was no longer about what started the encounter. It became about control, about dominance, about winning. Tyre didn't know that. He only knew his eyes burned. His body felt wrong, and he wanted to go home. Tyre ran, not fast, not clean, not with control. He ran the way someone runs when their body isn't cooperating, when their eyes are burning, when their breathing is uneven, when their legs don't quite respond the way they should. He stumbled. He swayed. At one point, he reaches a stretch of road captured by a pole-mounted camera. From a distance, the footage shows a tall, thin figure moving awkwardly down the street. Not sprinting, not charging, not attacking, just trying to get away. Behind him, officers closed in. They shouted. They cursed. They threatened. And Tyre kept moving, not because he wanted to escape justice, but because he wanted to reach something familiar, something safe. He ran in the direction of his apartment and toward his mother's home. 7 minutes. That's how close he is. 7 minutes from someone who knew his voice, 7 minutes from someone who knew his laugh, 7 minutes from someone who still called him her baby boy. When Tyre reaches his apartment complex, he looked exhausted. He didn't look like a threat. He looked like someone who was running out of strength. He stumbled toward a door. His body slowed. His voice cracked. And that's when he calls out, "Mom." Not loudly, not clearly, but desperately. Later, when Rovon Wells saw the footage, she recognized that voice instantly. She knew that sound. Every parent does. At this point, Tyre was no longer trying to escape. He was trying to be found. Seconds later, officers caught up to him. They grabbed him, and the night changed again. By the time officers reached Tyre at his apartment complex, his body was already failing him. He had been shocked. He had been sprayed. He had been chased. He was disoriented. He was barely able to keep himself upright. What happened next is not a single moment of force. It is a sequence, a sustained one. Tyre was restrained, pinned, held. The footage shows officers striking him. More than once, more than twice. He was not standing freely. He was not swinging. He was restrained. At one point, he was propped against a police vehicle. He could not hold himself up. His legs buckled, his body folded. And instead of being supported, he was struck again. An officer took out a phone, not to call for help, not to check his condition, but to take pictures. Tyre is visibly injured, barely responsive, and no one intervened. No one said, "That's enough." No one said, "Stop." No one said, "He needs medical attention." At one point, Tyre was held upright by his clothing, lifted, dropped, lifted again, not gently, not carefully. His body no longer looks like it belonged to him. And then the force stopped. But help did not begin. Tyre was left slumped, barely moving, barely conscious. Time passed, not seconds, minutes. He was not placed in a recovery position. He was not given immediate medical care. He was not treated like someone in danger. He was treated like a problem that has already been handled. Paramedics were eventually called. By the time they arrived, around 8:26 p.m., the damage had already been done. Tyre was loaded into an ambulance. He was not speaking. He was not standing. He was not walking. He was alive, but barely. And everything that followed was shaped by what did not happen here. No restraint. No urgency. No intervention. Tyre was taken to the hospital in critical condition. He could not talk. He could not explain what happened. His body did that for him. Doctors worked to stabilize him. Machines breathed for him. Monitors kept time for him. His family began to gather. For 3 days, they waited. They waited for improvement. They waited for movement. They waited for signs that he's still there. But Tyre did not recover. On January 10th, 2023, Tyre Nichols died. He was 29 years old. Later, the Shelby County Medical Examiner released a ruling. His death was classified as a homicide. Not an accident, not a complication, not natural. A homicide caused by blunt force trauma. This matters because it means his death is not framed as an unfortunate outcome. It is framed as the result of violence. And when that ruling becomes public, the story changes. What was once described as a traffic stop became something else. A fatal encounter, a national reckoning, a case that cannot be quietly buried. For days, the public hears only fragments. A traffic stop, then a hospitalization, then a death. No footage, no details, no timeline, just a name. Tyre Nichols. Then the Memphis Police Department makes an announcement. All 5 officers involved in Tyre's arrest were fired. Not suspended, not reassigned, fired. The police chief calls what happened a failing of basic humanity. That phrase matters because departments do not usually speak this way about their own officers, especially not this quickly. Soon after, Tyre's family was invited to watch the footage. Not the public, his family. They sat in a room, and they watched their son die. When they came out, they were not calm. They were shattered. Their attorneys described what they saw as a human piñata. Not a struggle, not a scuffle, a beating. The city announced that the footage will be released to the public. They prepared for unrest. They closed schools. They mobilized emergency services. When the video was released, it did not feel like a revelation. It felt like confirmation. A restrained man, overpowered, struck repeatedly, ignored when he couldn't stand, left without immediate aid. Tyre's name spread across the world, and within days, the city announced something else. The Scorpion unit is disbanded, shut down. Officially, a message was sent. What they were trained to do was no longer acceptable. But that didn't answer the main question. Not yet. In mid-January 2023, as protests spread and the video circulated, prosecutors began preparing charges. Not symbolic ones, serious ones. On February 17th, 2023, the Shelby County District Attorney formally charged all 5 former officers. Emmett Martin, Justin Smith, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Desmond Mills Jr. They faced multiple counts, including second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, official misconduct, official oppression. This is rare. Police officers are not often charged this aggressively, and it sent a message. The system was not pretending nothing happened. But cases like this are not simple. 2 of the 5 officers chose not to go to trial. They pleaded guilty. They admitted wrongdoing. They accepted plea deals. They agreed to testify. That matters, because it changed the story from speculation to insider confirmation. 3 officers chose another path. They pleaded not guilty, and their case moved to trial. In early 2025, the trial began. It was moved out of Memphis. The jury was selected elsewhere. For 9 days, evidence was presented. Video shown. Testimony is given. Timelines were argued. Then on May 7, 2025, the jury returned its verdict. Not guilty. On all state charges. The reaction is immediate. Shock, anger, disbelief. Because for many people, the video felt self-explanatory. But the law is not about what feels clear. It is about what meets legal thresholds. And that difference is devastating.
The all-white jury from a different part of the state deliberated for 8.5 hours, finding Bean, Haley, and Smith not guilty. Their lawyers arguing their clients did not deliver the kind of blows that would have killed Nichols. But the 3 former officers still faced the prospect of years in prison after being convicted on federal charges, though they were acquitted of the most serious charges in that trial as well. Sentencing is expected later this year. 2 other officers already pleaded guilty, including the man described as the most violent offender. Andrew.
A jury of your peers have found you not guilty on all charges with these matters. The court will enter the judgment sheets accordingly, and this will conclude your matter that's before the court. Good luck. Thank you all.
Thank you. All rise. Brother Captain Johnson, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
State court focuses on what happened. Federal court focuses on rights. Civil rights. Earlier in 2023, federal prosecutors filed charges, not about mistakes, but about abuse of authority, deprivation of rights under color of law. Some officers are charged with excessive force, others with witness tampering, trying to coordinate stories, trying to minimize what happened. In federal court, Demetrius Haley was found guilty of civil rights violations and witness tampering. Justin Smith and Tyre Bean were convicted of witness tampering. They faced serious potential sentences. But then something happened. In September 2025, a federal judge orders a new trial for some defendants due to procedural issues. Not because the facts changed, but because the law demands precision. Bean and Smith were released under house arrest. Haley remained in custody. Sentencing was delayed. And for Tyre's family, the pain stretched. Because closure kept moving. The criminal court asked, who broke the law? Civil court asked, what allowed it? Tyre's mother, Rovon Wells, filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Memphis, the Memphis Police Department, the officers involved. The claim is not only about that night. It is about the culture that made it possible. The lawsuit argued, Scorpion normalized aggression. Oversight was weak. Accountability was absent. And leadership knew, or should have known. The family alleged the unit disproportionately targeted black men, that it escalated minor encounters, that it operated without meaningful supervision. This case seeks more than money. It seeks exposure. A trial was scheduled and delayed, then reset to July 13th, 2026, because civil justice moves slowly and grief doesn't.
I think I will ask God why for the rest of my life, and never will I come to understand it. Even if God himself came in front of me and told me the reason, I don't think I would accept it. Some loves are too hard to bear, and with great love comes great pain, and with great loss comes the greatest pain of all. If love could have saved you, you would have lived forever.
Tyre Nichols' death is not just tragic. It is diagnostic. It shows what happens when force becomes default, when suspicion replaces proof, when escalation replaces communication. Nothing about Tyre's life suggests he was dangerous, yet he is treated as if he is. This case reveals how quickly people become invisible. Once labeled suspect, identity dissolves. Son, father, human being, replaced by a role. And roles don't receive empathy. They receive control. It also reveals silence. No one intervenes. No one stops it, which tells us this behavior wasn't shocking. It was familiar, and familiarity is the most dangerous thing of all. This was not random. It was sequential, and sequences can be interrupted. Routine stops must remain routine, not tactical, not militarized. Confusion must be treated with explanation, not punishment. When someone is restrained, force must stop. Intervention must be normalized. Silence must be treated as failure. And when someone can't stand, they must become patient. Not a problem. Tyre Nichols' death was not inevitable. It was permitted, and what is permitted can be changed. Tyre Nichols was not supposed to be remembered this way. He was supposed to be remembered by his son, by his family, by the people who knew his laugh. Instead, he became a name, a sign, a case. And that's what systems do when they fail. Tell me in the comments, what moment should this have ended differently? Because accountability begins with asking what should have happened. This is the crime anatomy, and this was Tyre Nichols. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, subscribe to the Crime Anatomy, share this video, and help keep Tyre Nichols' name alive.